This excellent plagiarism tutorial, created by Indiana State University, will introduce what plagiarism is, give examples, and teach you how to avoid plagiarism. Do not plagiarize! This is something you hear in every class, but what exactly does it mean? Plainly speaking, plagiarism is putting someone else's words or ideas in your paper and letting the reader believe that those words or ideas are actually yours. Some students plagiarize unintentionally because they don't know how to recognize plagiarism or how to cite ideas and quotations properly. But whether it's done intentionally or unintentionally, plagiarism is a serious academic offense for which a student can be expelled. As a college student, most of the ideas you put in your paper belong to other people. After all, this is a time when you are still acquiring the fundamental knowledge from which ideas grow. How then can you avoid plagiarism? After completing this tutorial, you will understand how to recognize plagiarism and how to avoid it. Enjoy! Plagiarism is a form of academic dishonesty, just like cheating. And when you claim someone else's ideas and words as your own, you're actually stealing. No university that wants to maintain its academic integrity will allow cheaters and thieves to remain on its campus. This tutorial has been a little funny, but plagiarism is taken very seriously at Bethel, and often the consequence for plagiarism is a failing grade. However, occasionally there have been offenses that have been given even a higher consequence. Plagiarism includes, but is not limited to, copying and pasting text from online media, such as encyclopedias or journal articles without attribution, copying and pasting text from any website without attribution, transcribing text from any printed material, such as books, encyclopedias, newspapers, journal articles, and magazines without attribution, simply modifying text from any of the above sources without proper citations. This includes lifting portions of another source and using them as your own work, replacing a few selected words using a thesaurus, using photographs, videos, or audio without permission or acknowledgement, using another student's work and claiming it as your own, even with the other student's permission. The latter is an act of collusion in which both students are plagiarizing. Acquiring work from commercial sources, including buying papers off the web or paying someone to do the work. Translation from one language to another without citations. Submitting an essay or paper that was written for another class or another purpose without the consent of the current instructor. Using your previous work in any way as a basis for new assignments without citing the original work in the bibliography. Let's look at some examples of plagiarism. This example is of copying and pasting text from online media, such as online encyclopedias or journal articles, without attribution. So this one came from the Encyclopedia Britannica article, and the red box, shows the part that was lifted from this one onto the person's paper. The term Iron Curtain had been in occasional and varied use as a metaphor since the 19th century, but it only came to prominence after it was used by the former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill in a speech at Fulton, Missouri, United States, on March 5, 1946, when he said of the communist states, "From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent." If you copy and paste the above section into your paper and let the reader believe the words are all yours, you have committed plagiarism. Another example, if you were to copy and paste a paragraph from a website and put it into your paper and let the reader believe the words were all yours, you have committed plagiarism. Transcribing text from any printed material, such as books, encyclopedias, newspapers, journal articles, and magazines without attribution, is also plagiarism. replacing a few selected words using a thesaurus or just using words from your own head to get synonyms. So, for example, if you take a look at the words that are in the box up here, in the space of less than 12 months in 2001-2002, more than a quarter of the largest corporations in the American economy experienced downturns in current sales revenues or prospects for future revenues that caused their common share prices to fall from the $50 range to the $1 or less. The leveling of gross domestic product, termed a recession by media alarmists, and then it continues on. The student took the original passage and replaced a few words with synonyms to come up with this paragraph. In less than 12 months between 2001 and 2002, over 25% of the largest corporations in the United States economy experienced downturns in current revenues or possibilities of future revenues, which caused their common share prices to fall from around $50 to $1 or less. The synonyms aren't the only problem. This sentence has the same structure as the original. If you type the above section into your paper and let the reader believe the words are all yours, you have committed plagiarism. You've learned what you can't do in your paper. If you can't copy and paste, how then can you use someone else's ideas without committing plagiarism? You must cite the source. What does it mean to cite your source? To cite or document a source is to tell the reader whose ideas and words are included in your paper and where these ideas and words were found. Citing is a two-step process. The first step is to cite in the body of your paper. The second step is to cite at the end of your paper on the reference page. The citation in the body of the paper is called an in-text citation or parenthetical citation. The citation at the end of the paper is called an end-of-text citation, a cited work, or a reference. A list of end-of-text citations is called a cited works list, a reference list, or a bibliography. There are formats or rules to follow for citing sources, and these formats are described in publications called style manuals. Style manuals instruct you on what information you must include in your citations and on the order of the information in your citations. If you've heard of an APA manual or an MLA manual, that is a style manual. There are also other types besides the APA and MLA, but these are the most common. To use someone else's exact words is to quote. It is perfectly fine to use quotes in your papers, but you must first put quotation marks at the beginning and end of the quote. Long quotes are handled differently. And second, indicate who wrote the quote and where you found it. This visual will show you how to do an in-text citation. First, I'll read the sentence. According to Berry, even after European medicine changed, medicine in the United States did not. In research and education especially, American medicine lagged far behind, and that made practice lag as well. Okay, so the green box with the arrows points to according to Berry. This is telling who originally wrote the words. Next, the quotation mark is signaling the beginning of the quote. And at the end of the quote, to signal the end, is the closing quotation mark. Then, if you notice, there's no period after the last word. The period is going to come after the citation, and the citation is going to include the year, comma, lowercase p, period, 8, then the closing parenthesis, and then the final period. Here's an example of a second way to properly cite your source in the text. According to Berry, 2001, even after European medicine changed, medicine in the United States did not. In research and education especially, American medicine lagged far behind, and that made practice lag as well. So, according to Berry, again you've identified who originally wrote the words, and then the change from the previous example is the writer decided to include the year directly after the author. This shows the year Barry's work was written. And then, since we've got the author and the year, at the end of the quotation, they added the page number. So basically, whenever there's a direct quote, you need the author's last name, the year it was published, and the page number. So the order you put those things in will depend on the structure of your sentence. In addition to using a direct quote, you can paraphrase or summarize someone else's words. To paraphrase is to put another's ideas into your own words. Paraphrasing is usually at the sentence level. To summarize is to put an entire paragraph, page, chapter, etc. into your own words. A summary is basically a more extensive paraphrase. Although you can quote, it is always better to paraphrase or summarize the source because it shows that you actually comprehend the ideas you're using. Do not paraphrase or summarize if doing so loses the emotion or impact of the original. You also must cite paraphrases and summaries, and we'll get to that next. This paragraph comes from page 392 of the book The Cold War, 1945 to 1991, Leaders and Other Important Figures in the United States and Western Europe. The highlighted part shows the paragraph that the student is going to use in his own writing. The student read this paragraph and then decided to paraphrase from this paragraph what is below. So it says, now look at this paraphrase of sentence numbers 3 to 4, which are highlighted in yellow above. As you can see, if you hit pause and read the entire thing, this student has done a nice job of putting the yellow words into his own words. To cite it, at the end, the student has included the Cold War. Now, typically, you include the author's last name here, but the author's last name was not identified. So in this case, they put the title of the book, The Cold War, in italics because it's a title, followed by a comma, and then 1992. If you compare, you'll notice that the paraphrase is not simply the same passage with a few words replaced with synonyms. The sentence structure is also different. Also note that although you must give the page numbers for direct quotes, you don't have to give the page number for paraphrases and summaries. This is an example of a student who intended to correctly cite his source, but has still plagiarized. I'm going to take the time to actually read this so that you can get the real feel for what plagiarism sometimes looks like. Apart from the true politicians operating the over-machinery of party and state, Stalin began from the 1920s to build up a personal group of agents chosen for their lack of scruple and totally dependent on and devoted to himself. There is a Russian proverb, out of filth you can make a prince, which Trotsky says Stalin was fond of quoting. These men were truly disgusting characters by any standards, a cadre which he had abandoned all normal political or even communist standards, and which may be regarded as in effect a personal group of hatchet men, ready for any violence or falsification at the orders of their leader. From Conquest, 1990, page 14. Is this person plagiarizing Conquest's work in the passage below? During the 1920s, Stalin started to build his group of personal agents, whom he chose because they lacked scruples and were completely dependent on him. There's a Russian saying, out of filth you can make a prince, which according to Trotsky, Stalin liked to quote. Anyone would consider these men truly disgusting. They were a group of men who had given up all standards and who served as Stalin's butchers, ready to fight and lie for him at any time. Although the student did make some changes, this is still plagiarism. This side of the chart will show the original phrase, and this one the plagiarized phrase. As you can see, some of the words are exact and many of the words are much too close. Wording that is too close to the original can be fixed by quoting the original outright or by correctly paraphrasing. This is a printable checklist of plagiarism that might be helpful to keep as a reference. And as always, check your APA manual for another resource on how to properly cite sources.